Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to submit extraneous material into the record.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today with a heavy heart as we commemorate the 4th anniversary of the Tops supermarket shooting in my community of Buffalo, New York. On May 14th, 2022, 4 years ago today, a racist, white supremacist terrorist traveled more than 2.5 hours to the only grocery store in a predominantly black neighborhood on the east side of Buffalo to carry out a targeted act of pure hatred. Motivated by racism and hate in his heart, the gunman entered Tops Friendly Markets with enhanced body armor and an AR-style rifle. He shot 13 people, 10 of them fatally. On this solemn anniversary, we remember the precious souls we lost 4 years ago today. Andre McNeil, a beloved father and brother. Celestine Cheney, a cancer survivor and grandmother to 6 beautiful children. Geraldine Talley, a proud mother, sister to 8 siblings, and an aunt. Hayward Patterson, a deacon at the State Tabernacle Church of God in Christ in Buffalo. Kat Massey, a civil rights activist, volunteer, and fierce advocate for gun violence prevention. Margus Morrison, a father and an aide for the Buffalo Public Schools. Pearl Young, a teacher in the Buffalo School District and pillar in her church community. Roberta Drury, an active community member, sister, and caregiver. Ruth Whitfield, a devoted caretaker, wife, mother, and grandmother. And Lieutenant Aaron Salter, Jr., a public servant, retired Buffalo police officer, and a hero who sacrificed his life that day to save those around him. In just 123 seconds, those 10 innocent lives were stolen from us, marking one of the darkest days in Buffalo's history and in America's history. The perpetrator, radicalized by white supremacist content online, fired a barrage of 50 shots, hell-bent on one goal: killing as many black community members as possible, all while live streaming to the world. A sick and twisted act of hatred and racist violence in America. Today is a difficult day for our community, for the people of Western New York, and for our country, as we mourn those we lost due to this senseless act of racist gun violence. Yet the carnage on that day could have been far worse if it weren't for the heroic actions of Lieutenant Aaron Salter, Jr., a 30-year veteran of the Buffalo Police Department. That afternoon, Lieutenant Salter was working as a security guard at Tops Friendly Market. When he heard the gunshots, Lieutenant Salter acted without hesitation and leapt into action to protect our community, firing at the shooter and hitting his target. But because this hate-filled terrorist was armed with enhanced body armor and tactical gear, Lieutenant Salter's shots did not penetrate, and he too was murdered. Lieutenant Salter died a hero, buying other patrons precious seconds to hide or escape as a result of his unwavering courage and his willingness to protect those in harm's way. I want to ask those listening here throughout the Capitol complex and at home to join me and pause for a moment of silence to honor the 10 individuals who should be with us here today. Thank you. Because of this hateful act, Buffalo joined an ever-growing list of communities that have been scarred by mass shootings. From Newtown to Monterey Park to Parkland to Uvalde and so many places in between, countless communities across our country and to Buffalo. We are united today in mourning and in commemoration as we work to ensure that we, one day, will live in a world where these hateful acts will not happen. When Columbine happened 27 years ago, there was a national promise that we would do everything possible to prevent another tragedy like it. But yet, entire generations of children have now grown up with the normalization of mass shootings. That reality cannot become normal. We must not allow this to become a permanent reality. On the 4th anniversary of this tragedy in Buffalo, we must use this opportunity to advocate for the advancement of common sense gun violence prevention legislation in the name of every single person we've lost because of a lack of it. We must condemn acts of hateful, racist violence in all forms. And we must come together as Americans to ensure that our supermarkets, our places of worship, our schools, and everywhere else in our community are free from the scourge of gun violence. This body has a moral obligation to take action. Our charge on both sides of the aisle must be to enact the common sense reforms that the vast majority of Americans overwhelmingly support in order to keep our communities safe and prosperous. We must enact a permanent assault weapons ban and make sure that military-grade body armor is only in the hands of our armed forces and law enforcement. We must crack down on ghost guns, straw purchasing, and deadly accessories that turn handguns into semi-automatic weapons. We must close the Charleston loophole. We must expand red flag laws, and we must strengthen our mental health support networks. We must reaffirm our commitment to ending the gun violence epidemic that plagues this country once and for all. Today, you will hear from members of the Congressional Black Caucus and the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, my colleagues from all over the country, who will join me in honoring the victims of the Tops supermarket shooting, condemning racially motivated violence in all forms, and calling for an end to the gun violence epidemic that plagues this country. Mr. Speaker, it's now my honor to yield to the gentle lady from Michigan, Representative Rashida Tlaib.
Thank you so much to my incredible colleague from New York, who, as we stand here, I know the community is continuing trying to heal as we mark, again, the 4-year anniversary since 10 of our black neighbors were targeted and murdered while grocery shopping at a supermarket in Buffalo. I think it's important to understand there was intentionality here and how the killer chose the location. We all know their lives were stolen due to racism, extremism, and the unchecked epidemic of gun violence plaguing our country. I always must ask this to my colleagues: how many more families, how many more children how many more families need to mourn before Congress acts, and how many more children need to lose their lives before we act? Every day, people are killed by guns in mass shootings, domestic violence incidents, suicides, preventable accidents. Entire communities are traumatized again and again by this violence. Far too often, again, the victims are children. So I say this, I stand in honor of a 9-year-old boy in Oakland County, Michigan, who accidentally shot himself in the face with an unsecured firearm. I stand in honor of a 6-year-old girl in Detroit, Michigan, who was accidentally shot and killed by an unsecured handgun in March. Even in that same weekend, another 6-year-old girl was hospitalized after she accidentally shot herself with an unsecured firearm. In Wayne County alone, 39 children have been killed or injured since 2020 after finding unsecured firearms. So it's not just mass shootings. It's also the fact that we must take measures to protect and store these guns. Protecting our loved ones, especially our babies, should not be a partisan issue. I called on this Congress to act in gun safety legislation, including the Safe Storage Saving Lives Act, which would require firearm sellers to provide every purchaser with a gun lock. You know, I always used to raise it and show people that it costs $10 to secure the gun. And Safe Storage Saves Lives Act, again, would be common sense gun safety legislation, and it's sitting right here in Congress waiting for a vote. While we wait for a vote, families are grieving our loved ones. And I ask and demand our Congress must act, must have courage to act and end this madness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Tlaib. I now yield to the gentleman from New York, our colleague, Representative George Latimer.
Thank you, Congressman Kennedy, and thank you for your compassion and your humanity. This tragedy occurred in Buffalo, and it was a crime, a racist crime against black people in Buffalo. But this crime is a crime against humanity, people of all ethnic backgrounds, and it's a crime that could happen in any place across this country. My home is 375 miles away from the site of this crime, and yet we too are affected by the same policies that have allowed this tragedy to happen. The young man who committed this crime, motivated by racism and radicalized on the internet, drove 200 miles, half the distance between my home and Congressman Kennedy's home. He drove 200 miles to particularly target this supermarket in an African-American neighborhood. What depth of depravity causes a human being to do that? And all of us, whether our skin is white, whether it's black, whether we trace our heritage to Latin America, Asia, the Middle East, Europe, have to see this as a crime against all humans, because it is dehumanizing to take a weapon of mass destruction into a supermarket to kill people who are shopping, who are just there doing the average thing that we all do every day. As my colleague from Michigan pointed out, there's legislation in this chamber that needs to become law. And it needs to have support not just from those people of color, but from those of us who represent every area and every demographic in this country, because the next victims could be anywhere in this country. It's important to understand that the people of Buffalo have allies all across New York State. We grieve with them. We stand by our brothers from Buffalo and our sisters from Buffalo, as we do from those in all of the sad places that Congressman Kennedy referenced. And we must make a commitment that out of this tragedy on this anniversary will be a resolve to make sure this doesn't happen again. But we have to act quickly, because the efforts to warp people's mind and to convince them that violence is the future of America is moving very quickly, even as those of us who believe in peace and brotherhood have to respond. Thank you, Congressman Kennedy, for your leadership and your friendship.
Thank you, Congressman Latimer. Mr. Speaker, I now yield to the gentle lady from Georgia, Representative Lucy McBath.
Well, I want to thank my colleague, Congressman Kennedy, for gathering us here this evening in this very somber anniversary. He truly is honoring his community in Buffalo very, very well. I actually have family members in his district. He is their member of Congress. 4 years ago, 10 innocent people lost their lives in an act of hate at a place that we all know very well. We frequent our grocery stores all the time. And a man decided that a group of people just simply didn't deserve to live because of the color of their skin. The shooter in Buffalo used an assault weapon so that he could kill as many people as possible in as little time as possible. And of course, we should all think that this is absolutely horrifying. Thankfully, though, he was brought to justice because our justice system took action and sentenced him to life in prison, where he is now. And the families of these grandmothers, these fathers and sons and sisters, they were actually able to take solace in knowing that something was done to ensure this man would never harm their communities again. And my heart remains with all the families as they remember their loved ones. I still pray for every single family, for every tragedy, because I know exactly how they feel. And that's what continues to drive me to action. These families, they deserved better. Every family that we lose across this nation deserves better. No one should be subjected to the violence while they go about their daily lives, running errands, going to church, going to the movie theater, going to school, going to festivities. Weapons of war simply do not belong on our streets. They don't belong in our churches, and definitely not in our grocery stores. The assault weapons ban, which I've held since 2023, has proven to prevent deaths by firearms. And I've also introduced the Go Safe Act, a life-saving bill that focuses on the internal operations of semi-automatic guns, not the cosmetic components that gun sellers tend to modify to find loopholes. It is so far past time that we pass both these bills and so many other pieces of good, comprehensive gun safety legislation to save lives and to ensure that no more families experience the excruciating pain of losing their loved ones in a senseless act of gun violence. This country deserves better. Our kids deserve better. And the victims of these senseless shootings, they deserve better. Every one of them. These pictures, these human beings deserved better. And they should be with us right now, enjoying their lives today. These men and these women, they deserve to see their grandchildren and children growing up, to make their own marks in the world. The Gun Violence Prevention Task Force and Democrats, we've made progress towards a safer country with helping to pass historic legislation. But we've got to continue to stand for gun safety in this country. We're not going to forget those that were lost in Buffalo. And I assure you, I will not forget my son who was killed from unnecessary gun violence. And I will not forget all the children at Sandy Hook. And I will not forget all the children at Parkland. And I will not most certainly forget the everyday gun violence and people that are dying in our communities every day, and nobody even knows their names. They don't get the big headlines in the newspaper. No one talks about them nationally, but their families suffer in silence. We're not going to forget those that were lost in Buffalo, and we're going to continue to fight to end gun violence because hate absolutely has no place in this country. And I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you, Congresswoman McBath, and thank you for your extraordinary courage and leadership in taking that pain of yours and your families and turning it into triumph and turning it into positive action for our communities and our nation. We are indebted to you. Mr. Speaker, I now yield to the gentleman from Maryland, Representative Glenn Ivey.
I want to thank my colleague from New York for putting this together today. I want to thank the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force and the Congressional Black Caucus for joining in as well in support of this effort. The tragedy in Buffalo, unfortunately, is not a rare event. As you just heard from my colleague, 10 people were gunned down using an assault weapon that had been sold to an 18-year-old, an AR-15 that had been modified. And he gunned them down in cold blood, and he drove 200 miles to get to them because he wanted to kill African Americans, and I guess that was the closest he could get to find them. And that's what he did that day. And he'd been inspired, sadly, by another similar type of shooting, a mass shooting in Charleston, South Carolina, just a few years before that. At the Mother Emanuel Church, in fact, my colleague from New York and I had a chance to go visit there just a few months ago, where 9 people were gunned down. The person had come into the church, sat through Bible study with the African Americans that he later gunned down, and killed 9 of them. So I know the question that we have now, we have a long list of these that happen on such a regular basis. Sometimes people are numbed by it, forget to keep track of it. And it's a sad day that we've reached from that standpoint. A version of that, too, that I heard the other day in the hallways here, the shooting that took place at the hotel where President Trump was about to speak. And one of the things that the person remarked to me was that the older people were scared by the gunfire, but the younger folks were not. And I kind of wondered about that, and then I thought about it, and I said, well, this is the generation that's grown up. Instead of doing fire drills, they've done active shooting drills. And so they've been trained tragically in what to do when you hear gunfire like that. Schools now sell bulletproof backpacks to protect kids, quote unquote, protect kids from this kind of gun violence. Bulletproof chalkboards. Think about that. How did we get to this place? And then the next question, of course, is how do we get out of it? We've talked a little bit about some of the solutions to gun violence. I got to say that my Republican colleagues, sadly, are not in support of nearly any of them that I'm aware of. The ghost guns piece, in particular, was a shock for me. Ghost guns, as you may know, are untraceable guns. The only reason somebody would want a gun that's untraceable is if you want to commit a crime and you want to make sure that law enforcement cannot find you. Why these guns would be illegal is beyond me. But there was a period where they were. And we couldn't pass legislation to ban them. So the Biden administration reached out to the ATF, which passed a regulation that did ban them. The Supreme Court, the Trump Supreme Court, to my surprise, upheld that regulation. So I thought, well, maybe it's a new day. Well, yesterday in the Appropriations Committee, I'm sorry to say, my Republican colleagues passed language that would repeal the ban on ghost guns. And, you know, the sad thing about it is I think they were trying to do it sort of in the cover of dark because they didn't offer an actual piece of legislation that would have hearings and the like to do the same because they'd have to stand up and defend it there. But they just tried to slip this in. And this is a tragic moment, I think, given all of the deaths, all of the killings, all of the murders that we've seen year after year after year, and now decade after decade after decade here in the United States. And I also want to just add this. We found some things that do work. You heard about the assault weapons ban, and I know that's a bridge too far for many of my Republican colleagues, I guess all of them actually, because none of them will even co-sponsor legislation like that. So I put together a bill. It's called Raise the Age. It would raise the age from 18 to 21 to buy an assault-style weapon. It's already required that you be 21 to buy handguns, And that was a bill that was put in place by the Ronald Reagan administration. So I thought, well, maybe we can get some support for this. Not one Republican co-sponsor for that bill. And the shooter in Buffalo was 18 years old. And he bought the gun by himself without anybody to monitor it. And the shooter in Charleston, he was 21, but he should have been caught by the background check. He slipped through, though, because it was underfunded, and they didn't have enough people to make sure they caught and did all of the checks, even though he should have been flagged, and he was, but they didn't have the bodies to do the follow-through. So he got the gun, and we know what he did after that. Then lastly, on this point, some of the things we found that also work, it's not just enforcement, it's also intervention and prevention. We found grants that help with violence in the street to reduce it, helps by reaching young people before they get too deep into trouble, or help to get them out before they get too far along with it. But the Trump administration's cut 400 of those grants worth $815 million. So the funds that would be used to help prevent street violence, or even worse, violence in our schools, gun violence in our schools, has been cut back. So I say this, on this day of remembrance, call upon all of my colleagues. I know we don't agree on everything. In fact, we don't agree on a lot. But let's see if we can find a solution to this. You want to protect the Second Amendment? That's great. But we've got to be able to find a way to protect the Second Amendment and protect second graders at the same time. Let's get this done. Let's get this done. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you very much, Congressman Ivey. Mr. Speaker, I now yield to the gentle lady from Illinois, Representative Robin Kelly.
Thank you so much, Congressman Kennedy, for gathering us. Mr. Speaker, as a member of the Congressional Black Caucus and the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, I rise today to remember the 10 lives stolen, the 3 people injured, and the survivors of the hateful mass shooting in Buffalo 4 years ago. I remember their lives, but I also urge Congress to actually do something meaningful to honor them and all survivors of gun violence. Congress passed the first federal gun safety law in nearly 30 years, but the American people cannot wait another 30 years. There are pieces of legislation waiting to be passed and programs that are waiting for funding that have already been approved. Over 110 Americans are dying every single day. Instead, the Trump administration has only exacerbated this public health crisis and fanned the flames of racist rhetoric and violence. We have witnessed hateful rhetoric turn into hate crimes for far too long. We must condemn racism, full stop. Moments of silence are not enough. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. The victims and survivors of the shooting in Buffalo and across the country deserve better from Congress. They deserve action. We need universal background checks, red flag laws, safe storage, assault weapons ban, community violence intervention funding, and better support for survivors. The gun lobby responsible for putting profits over people, safety must be held accountable. I've asked for about 13 years now in Congress just who or how many have to be maimed or die before we take action. It's not first graders, it's not people worshiping in their church, it's not a young lady playing in the park. It's not a young man coming out of choir practice. It's not a young man riding on the CTA bus. It's not even members of Congress that have moved us. But I will not stop fighting until everyone, no matter where they live, the color of their skin, who they love, or even how they vote, we all need to live free from gun violence. I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman Kelly. Mr. Speaker, I now yield to the gentle lady from New Jersey, Congresswoman LaMonica McIver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to stand alongside my colleague, Congressman Tim Kennedy, to commemorate the 4th anniversary of the Tops supermarket shooting in Buffalo, New York. 10 people, 10 loved ones, 10 members of a community left home to run errands on what should have been a normal day. They showed up to Tops to buy groceries for their families. And like most of us, this was one of the last places they would ever think that they would be in danger. That day, a white supremacist walked into a Tops supermarket and turned an average store on a day into a site of terror. This was racial terrorism. The shooter was radicalized by white supremacists on the internet to the point he live streamed the attack. It gets to the point where our nation continues to see history repeat itself because we refuse to learn from the past. Across the aisle, people refuse to accept that an 18-year-old should not have access to a military-grade firearm. They refuse to accept that when white supremacy is allowed and normalized on the internet, the consequences are devastating. Buffalo is a painful reminder of the racism and gun violence crisis affecting all of our nation. We're at the point where families live with the sound of gunshots as background noise, and children are taught lockdown drills in school before they fully understand and learn algebra. And the worst part of it all is that our nation is starting to treat this like it's normal, like there's nothing we can do about it. We cannot keep treating it like an inevitable part of American life. But if we only commemorate and remember names in cities without actions, we're disrespecting the families who wake up with the trauma of losing their loved ones every day. Thoughts without policy are not enough. The families in Buffalo should not have to watch us commemorate this tragedy year after year without meaningful change. So tonight, we honor the victims of Buffalo. We stand with Congressman Kennedy, who is their voice here. We mourn with their families. We condemn white supremacy and racially motivated violence that is showing its face far too often. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman McIver, and to all of my colleagues that joined me here this evening. The Western New York community, the national community was impacted in a gut-wrenching way on May 14th, 2022. I vividly remember the minutes, hours, and days after the shooting. As it occurred, I was with my family out of town when I received a call from Zanetta Everhart. Then, my Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in my New York State Senate office, who's now President pro tempore of the Buffalo Common Council, representing the Maston District. She herself had just received the most awful phone call any parent can imagine. Her only child, Zaire, an employee at Tops, called her screaming and crying. Mom, I've been shot. Zaire had been doing what any parent would want their child to be doing. He was helping an elderly customer load her groceries into her car. That's when the first shots were fired in the parking lot. Zaire was shot and went to the ground, unable to get himself up. And in that moment, finding the courage and strength and being able to remove himself from the situation and run for help. Time stood still. Nothing prepares a parent for that call, and nothing prepares a friend on how to best be there to provide comfort and support. Zaire was the only black person shot that day who survived. By the grace of God, he survived. He had been hit in the neck and the shoulder with a hollow point bullet shot by an AR-15 rifle. He is now alive and thriving, giving all glory to God. But the physical and emotional scars will live with him and his family forever. Frantic phone calls to friends, family, colleagues in government, and law enforcement followed from me as we struggled to understand what had happened. I immediately got into my car, left my family, and drove 5 hours back to Buffalo. I had to see my friend. I had to be with our community. And I had to make sure that she and they knew that they had the support of our entire community every step of the way. When I arrived back to Buffalo to be with Zanetta and our neighbors as we processed the gravity of what had just occurred, our whole city was going through the same process, feeling an excruciating combination of emotions: despair, heartbreak, rage, anger, confusion, but also resolve. In the face of one of the most unimaginable tragedies and hardship that the city of good neighbors, Buffalo, New York, had ever experienced, we received support not just from each other, but statewide, nationally, and even internationally. We saw an almost immediate call to action to enact gun violence prevention legislation at the state level in the New York State Legislature. Just days later, legislation that I was incredibly proud to help craft and pass. We demanded action federally, including when I joined Zanetta here on the Hill as she testified before the House, along with the son of Ruth Whitfield, another victim, former Buffalo Fire Commissioner Garnell Whitfield, and along with the families of the victims of Uvalde Massacre, which spurred the first federal gun violence action in decades. And we saw a devastated community finding the resolve to come together as one with compassion, solidarity, and resilience. We met hatred and evil with love and friendship, because love always conquers hate. There were food donations for a neighborhood that was reeling and had lost its only supermarket. World Central Kitchen was on the ground within days, ensuring that a grieving community could break bread together over a hot meal and begin to process the trauma they had endured. We had visits from President Biden and Vice President Harris, reminding us that an entire nation stood by our side. We saw a memorial sprout up almost immediately, a raw display of the pain that we felt. And we saw the creation of a 514 Memorial Foundation and Healing Center dedicated to honoring the lives of those lost and supporting the victims' families. As we buried our 10 neighbors, we honored each of them for the lives they lived. We committed to ourselves that their memories would not be forgotten and their legacies would live on. I personally promised each family at every funeral that their loved ones would not die in vain, that their memories would spur us as a community and ultimately as a nation into action to prevent further tragedies like this from occurring. Under Councilwoman Everhart's leadership, Buffalo has established an Office of Gun Violence Prevention, showing that even in the face of federal inaction, communities can still take charge of their own future. And we continue to witness a never-ending pursuit of justice for the innocent victims who were gunned down. Today, while the trauma for many still lingers, we're reminded of that resolve, the unwavering sense of community and dedication to one another, united in mourning, but motivated by the shared desire to enact change. Part of that change, as mentioned by my colleagues, is enacting gun violence prevention legislation. Mr. Speaker, in memory of Lieutenant Salter and his fellow victims who died on this day 4 years ago, I'm proud to lead the Aaron Salter Jr. Responsible Body Armor Possession Act. This bill, which I'm proud to co-lead with Congresswoman Grace Meng, bans the sale and ownership of enhanced body armor, hard-shell, military-grade, rifle-resistant body armor that was used to carry out the Tlaib mass shooting, body armor that should only be in the hands of our military and law enforcement. On 5/14, the terrorists acted in just 123 seconds to murder 10 innocent individuals and severely injure 3 others, all thanks to the enhanced body armor that protected him from Lieutenant Salter's shots and an assault rifle that allowed him to fire rapidly. No civilian should have access to military-grade body armor, equipment that's designed for war, not our streets. The Lieutenant Aaron Salter Jr. Responsible Body Armor Possession Act ensures that no civilian can possess military-grade body armor ever again. Armor that's been used in mass shootings across the United States, Sutherland Springs, Texas, Aurora, Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, San Bernardino, California, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The list goes on and on and on. Through this legislation, we can ensure that enhanced body armor never falls into the wrong hands again. With the support of 27 of my House Democratic co-sponsors currently and growing, I call on the U.S. House of Representatives to pass this critical common sense legislation. The legislation and our action must not end there. Gun violence legislation can help stop mass shootings. We have deep wounds in this country that we must work together to heal. And while gun violence legislation can help stop mass shootings, I believe that with every fiber in my being, we cannot discuss May 14th, 2022 without acknowledging the underlying cause. The scourge of white supremacy, a legacy of our nation's original sin of slavery. Before the advent of this nation, families were torn apart and trafficked across the Atlantic in unimaginably torturous conditions to be sold to the highest bidder, treated like livestock. Making it all worse, it was legal. From the 3/5 Compromise to the Fugitive Slave Act to the Dred Scott decision, an entire legal framework was set up to enforce white supremacy. And I'm just scratching the surface. Even after the Civil War, when slavery was abolished at the cost of hundreds of thousands of lives, and despite the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, that legal framework continued under the guise of Jim Crow laws. Grandfather clauses, poll taxes, literacy tests, all legal, but deeply immoral. It continued in the shadows through hate groups like the Ku Klux Klan. It took our country another century to pass the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Yet still, that original sin remains. It remains in the tacit racism we see through redlining and through food deserts. It remains with the Supreme Court's evisceration of the Voting Rights Act, allowing states to break up communities of color and silence their voices. It remains with the vile concepts like the Great Replacement theory, often peddled by anti-American voices on the far right, including people in Congress that we serve with today. With the advent of social media, we've thrown gasoline on the fire, allowing this toxic worldview to spread even faster with dire circumstances. That hatred led a man to plan this massacre in Buffalo 4 years ago. He purchased his weapon and his body armor. He modified his rifle and purchased some of the deadliest ammunition available, crossing state lines. He researched his target, drove nearly 3 hours, and he opened fire. He bears responsibility for his actions, and he will never see the light of day as a free man again. We must raise our children to view their fellow human beings with dignity, with kindness, with empathy, and with acceptance. If we don't, then the list of hate-motivated shootings will continue to grow. More cities will be added to the list after Buffalo, after El Paso, after Pittsburgh, and Charleston, and Orlando. Nobody believes that we can legislate hatred away. But the policies advanced here in Washington have cascading effects across our country. When we allow communities of color to be silenced, we are strengthening hate. When we stick our heads in the sand and push forward a rose-colored version of our history and whitewash our history, we only enable bigotry to take root. When we refuse to learn from the lessons of the past, we are dooming ourselves to the future filled with violence. And that is something we can control. It is something we can legislate. I invite my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and from all political points of view to join us in this fight, or else this carnage will only continue. Mr. Speaker, in honor of these beautiful souls, these wonderful and beautiful souls that were lost, I'd like to read into the congressional record a little bit about each of them. Lieutenant Aaron Salter, Jr., a hero and public servant, saving lives that day as he confronted the shooter without hesitation. He was a loving husband, father, friend, and colleague to many over his years in public service. In his spare time, he was a musician, took a keen interest in cars, enjoyed taking trips with his family. He'll be remembered not just for selfishly heroic actions he took that day to save lives, but for the person he was and the contributions to our community. His memory lives on in each of us as a shining example of citizenship, bravery, and love. Andre McNeil was at the supermarket on that fateful day to buy a surprise birthday cake for his 3-year-old son, Andre McNeil, Jr. He never came home with his son's birthday cake. Andre loved basketball, playing the guitar, writing poems, listening to music, but most of all, he loved his family. He loved his children. He loved his siblings. He loved his grandchildren. Today, 4 years later, Andre's loved ones are forced to reckon with the grief every day as they navigate his absence. Celestine Cheney, a devoted mother to her son, Wayne, a loving grandmother of 6, and the youngest of 4 sisters, survived by her partner and fiancé, Raymond Johnson. A fighter in every sense of the word, she'd beaten breast cancer and survived multiple brain aneurysms, odds that would have broken most. But on a day like any other, while picking up ingredients for the strawberry shortcake she was making for her family, she was taken from this world far too soon. Geraldine Talley, known as Jerry to her friends and family, was 62 years old. She was a devoted member of our community who worked at a nonprofit, assisting people with mental illness and related substance abuse issues. She loved to cook for her family and friends. She was at Tops on 514, shopping for a few ingredients for a weekly waterfront picnic with her fiancé. Jerry left behind her children, Janicia Smith and Mark Talley Jr., a stepdaughter, Marquise Jacobs, 4 siblings, and her beloved fiancé, Gregory Allen. Catherine Massey, known to many as Cat, was 72 years old. Cat worked for 40 years for Blue Cross Blue Shield and was always committed to the betterment of our community. She was a longtime campaigner against gun violence, founding We Are Women Warriors with her friends Betty Jean Grant and Dr. Eva Doyle. She was a regular contributor to the Buffalo Challenger and the Buffalo Criterion. Cat was also an active resident in Buffalo's Fruit Belt neighborhood, helping to form a block club and successfully fighting for the creation of new public park at her home street of Cherry Street. She was survived by her siblings and her nieces and nephews. Hayward Patterson, 67 years old. He was in his truck waiting for a friend. He drove to Tops to pick up groceries, something he often did for those in need. A deeply devoted servant of God, Hayward was a deacon at the State Tabernacle Church of God in Christ in Buffalo. According to his fellow churchgoers, Deacon Patterson was often the first one to arrive and the last to leave. He helped open and close the church, clean, shovel, and he volunteered in every capacity, including in the church's soup kitchen. He is survived by his 3 children, his beloved wife, as well as his parents, siblings, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Margus Morrison, a beloved and devoted father, built his life in Buffalo, raising his children with his companion of 25 years, Regina Patterson, and serving as an aide for the Buffalo Public Schools. Margus was just 52 years old when his life was stolen from us. He was known as a reliable and steady presence in our community who was always there when his loved ones needed him. Marcus's family and friends remember a kind and generous person whose sense of humor and unwavering support defined every moment they shared with him. Pearl Young, a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother, and a devoted wife of Oliver Young, Jr. A graduate of the University at Buffalo, Pearl served as a substitute teacher at Buffalo Public Schools for 20 years. In her free time, she was active with the Good Samaritan Church of God in Christ in Cheektowaga, where she taught Sunday school and volunteered at the parish's food pantry. She was the loving mother of James, Pamela, Damon, sister of Annie Ruth Winston and Jean Craig, grandmother to 10, great-grandmother to 7. Roberta Drury was 32 years old. She moved to Buffalo to help care for her brother who was recovering from his battle with leukemia. She was murdered while picking up groceries for him. Robbie, as she was called growing up, was the kind soul defined by her unwavering love for family and a smile that was known to light up a room. She was survived by her parents, her grandfather, her beloved siblings, as well as numerous aunts, uncles, nephews, cousins, and friends. And Ruth Whitfield, a mother of our community. Ruth Whitfield was 86 years old. She was a longtime parishioner at Durham Memorial AME Zion Church, where she sang in the choir. She was a devoted wife, caring for her husband and soulmate, Garnell Whitfield, of 68 years. Earlier that day, on May 14th, Ruth had visited her husband at the nursing home, just as she had done every day, and had made a stop at the grocery store on her way home. She left behind her husband and their children, along with 9 grandchildren, 8 great-grandchildren, and 5 great-great-grandchildren. May all of their souls rest in peace. Our city, our state, our community, our country mourns with them, but we are driven in their memory to do better for all of us and for future generations that we will never meet. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleagues for joining me here today to honor the souls that we lost on May 14, 2022, 4 years ago today. I want to thank the Congressional Black Caucus and the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force for joining in as well in commemorating this 4th anniversary of the Tops Friendly Markets Massacre. Today, we honor the victims and their families, and we urge this body to pass meaningful gun violence prevention legislation to ensure we live in a country free from tragedies like 514. May God bless their souls. May God bless all of us. May God bless the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Thank you so